Hey everyone, it's Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today. So if you follow the sheep and goat markets, you have probably noticed that prices keep going higher. Actually, it would appear that goat prices are getting substantially higher than sheep prices. And I want to talk a little bit about what's driving both of these markets and what in particular is driving the goat market above that of the sheep market, just to give you a little bit of insight and to give you some things to think about as you either plan to start your new hobby farm or maybe expand or change your existing farm. Stay tuned to find out more. So here we are, and we're talking about raising sheep and goats and selling them at market and the prices that are associated with them. Now, there are lots and lots of different prices all over the United States. I was reviewing some of the USDA market numbers today as I was preparing for this video. And, you know, the prices do fluctuate, although generally speaking, they are within the same ballpark all over the United States. I have noticed that sheep and lamb prices tend to be a little bit more steady, where the goat prices tend to fluctuate depending on where you're located within the United States. There's been a few things that most of us producers have noticed over the last year, especially since COVID started to hit, and that has been that our sheep and goat prices have continued to climb, and goat prices especially are getting very high. So what do I mean by this? Well, what I mean is a few years ago, if we would have said 3 or 4 years ago, I would have expected my lamb prices to be somewhere right at or about $2 a pound live weight average year round. Now I'm looking more between $2.50 a pound live weight up to $3 a pound live weight year round. It's kind of like holiday season prices are here all the time. Goats have gone substantially higher, especially in our area, and we are consistently seeing goats walking the scale just on an average weekend at our sale barn, anywhere between $4 and $5 a pound live weight for a younger lamb, somewhere between, we'll say, 40 and 60 pounds. So what's going on with this? Well, part of this phenomenon has to do with my location. My location here in northern Indiana, I kind of fall between two very large ethnic groups, ethnic populations that are in Chicago and in Michigan. I am easily located, by people in Illinois as well as Michigan. We even have customers that come up from Indianapolis as well, so that helps. But the reality is the ethnic population in the United States that prefers goat meat is growing all the time, year after year, and we can see this in the numbers. The numbers don't lie. If you were to go back a decade, the number of goats that were being raised in the United States was somewhere around 500,000, so about 500,000. Last year we were over 2 million. So things have grown substantially, and while that sounds like a lot, the USDA says we are still about 160% below market demand, where we need to be. There's actually a ton of goat meat that is brought into the United States. I think our number one importer or exporter that exports to us would be Australia. But we have lots and lots of goats that are getting brought into the United States because we just can't meet the demand. This has a couple reasons behind it. First of all, on an average survey that they did across the United States, they compounded this out to where they figure there's about 50-some million people in the United States that have a preference, 53 million people in the United States that have a preference for goat meat over all other meats. It's very healthy. You're on par or above that of beef, but the fat level in it is extremely low, and it also has a lot of other valuable things to it. The other thing that's occurring is what's happened with COVID. You know, when COVID happened, for those of you that produce, you already know this, but for those of you that don't produce animals, this may surprise you, and that is that you could not find a place in a locker, and when I say locker, I mean a place that would slaughter and process your animal. You could not find a slot to take care of your animal. And it is still to the point now that we are booking out appointments, in some cases a year in advance. There's a lot that goes into this and why this occurred, but the bottom line is there's a super duper high demand to get animals processed and very low availability. And of course, as you know from economics, if you've ever studied economics, when demand increases and supply decreases, you start seeing these astronomical prices start to show their face, and you start to see the demand really get out of control, and that's kind of where we're at. So what does this have to do with sheep and goats? Well, sheep and goats are very easily processed on the homestead. They're easy to handle. You can pick up a sheep or a goat and put them in the back of a pickup truck and move them around rather easily without causing any danger or harm to yourself or your equipment. And they're easier for an individual to process, much easier than a hog to process, much easier surely than a cow to process, and we're talking about for average people. So while some people who may not have experienced or been exposed to sheep or goat meat in the past, maybe they prefer to always get cattle done or hogs done, and now they're finding themselves in a situation where they're like, hey, I've got this hog or I've got this cow, but I just can't find a spot to get them in, to get them processed, are starting to turn to these smaller animals like sheep and goats that they can more readily and more easily take care of on their farm. The other thing that has occurred, the second point that I'd like to make, is exactly what you're doing right now. You're watching an educational video on a multimedia platform. And while there is a lot of negativity to be said about what's occurred with our multimedia over the past decade, there is a positive, at least what I consider very positive, and that is a lot of younger, new people are learning old skills that were almost forgotten. Prior to really the internet kicking off, for those of you that are as old as I am, you can remember we were losing a lot of skill sets in the late 90s. And you were running into, there was some old timers, quote unquote, that knew how to do things, some older skills, caning chairs or refinishing furniture, or, you know, people that knew how to do plaster work, or people that knew how to raise bees or sheep or goats, or fill in the blank, these hobby niche kind of tasks. And with the internet coming online and with social media platforms coming online, this has kind of served as a renaissance or a revival, if you will, of a lot of these skills that were almost forgotten. Think of how much you've learned from multimedia platforms that you follow, maybe this channel or maybe others. Without this thing we call the internet, you and I would have never been in touch with each other as short amount of time ago as a decade or a decade and a half ago. So we've really come a long way, and this is starting to drive some of this demand and traffic as well. A lot of people are getting into farming that weren't in farming before, and sheep and goats are profitable, and they're a great starting off point for a lot of people. When you look at the dollars across the board, this would be my next main point. Sheep and goat prices, if you check out USDA websites, if you actually look and see, okay, per pound, what am I getting the most money? You're going to see consistently sheep and goats are at the top of that chain. We just sold some cattle last weekend for $1.20 a pound live weight. We just sold some goats last weekend for almost $5 a pound live weight. There's a huge disparity between the two. Now, we're going to talk about this a little later. Don't get too hung up in that, because there's a lot of positives and negatives that go along with that, other than just, gee whiz, this is what the price is per pound. But that's another thing that is starting to drive that demand a little bit more, I think. So, when we look at the sale barns, I think more people are getting comfortable with sale barns and going there in order to buy animals. I think a lot more people are getting turned on to, sheep and goats and what they have to offer as far as health and as far as getting them processed. And then, of course, as I said, we talk about just the nostalgia of it and the mindset of the individuals in the United States. So all of this is driving that demand, and I think it has a lot to do with the prices that we're seeing. So with that being said, I don't suspect that these prices are going to drop anytime soon. If anything, they're going to stay steady. More than likely, they're going to increase. We've seen a huge increase in costs of things like fertilizer and feeds and things of that nature, and surely fuel prices, and surely along with that, it should tend to drive the other prices up. So if you're thinking about getting into sheep and goats, I would say now is a good time. If you're waiting for prices to drop, I just don't think that you're going to see it, or at least not see it anytime soon. So something for you to definitely consider there. Showing animals is becoming more popular as well. We kind of went through a lull, and that's kind of coming back up. And we find ourselves in a very interesting scenario now that has not occurred very much in the past, and that is where the market prices, that is the meat prices of these animals, sheep and goats at auction, is surpassing that of the show animals. So normally that does not happen. The reason that doesn't happen, go there with me mentally here, why am I going to sell you a goat for show cheaper than I can get it for meat at the sale barn? I would just as soon put that animal on a trailer, take it to the sale barn, and have them mail me my check in the mail, as opposed to deal with you as an individual that wants to sell it. With that being said, I'll gladly sell you that show stock, but you're going to pay more for it. So right now, I would suspect that we're going to see an increased price in the show market as well. It's just naturally more than likely going to happen. So that's one more thing I think that you should consider as we move forward. Hey everyone, it's Tim. I wanted to take a quick break. I know we're in the middle of talking about sheep and goats and what's going on with them, but I wanted to remind you that we have some great resources for you. 3 great resources that I always want you to think about when you think about Linessa Farms. First one is Linessa Farms website, www.linessafarms.com. Go there, go to the upper right hand corner and click on downloads. You are going to find all kinds of stuff there, from medication administration charts to forms that you can use on your farm. We also have our famous sheep and goat calculator that you can download for free. You can put in dates and it will tell you what you need to do all year round to raise your own sheep and goats, so make sure you check that out. The other thing is Facebook. We want you to check out LinessaFarms.com and Linessa Farms LLC, on Facebook. We have our own Facebook page, which is fantastic, and it's cool to keep up with things. We have prizes and contests and all kinds of things like that. But we also have Linessa Farms Tack Box, which is a group. You can see the link for that in the description below. And this is our forum. We have people from all over the world. We have professional breeders. We have all kinds of cool people on there that are willing to answer any questions that you may have, and it's free. You can go on there, you can ask your questions, and if I don't know the answer, I can get you in touch with someone that does. We have some of the top breeders and professionals in the United States on that website that are willing to answer your questions. So make sure you check that out. Last but not least, I want to talk to you very quickly about Foundation Feed. Foundation Feed is our feed company that we own, and we opened specifically for those of you that live in rural communities and do not have great access to feed. Everyone should have access to a superior, great feed product no matter where you live, and we have filled that void by pairing up with animal nutritionists, scientists, really, I'm not just saying that, from local here in Indiana. A lot of them are from Purdue University. And we have feed developed for us that is highly nutritious, highly concentrated, high protein content, so 40-45% protein content that you can mix into your own feed on your farm. So what this allows you to do is ship a very small amount of feed from us, like a 10-pound bucket from us to you, and then mix it in with the grains on your own farm. It is extremely cost effective, and we have feed that is, it's not like the big box store where, you know, they have feed that's made for, you know, all of these species. Our feed is broken down and made specifically not only for the species you have, not only for a goat or for a sheep, but it's also made for a goat kid or a male goat or a female goat or a lamb, so on and so forth. We have feed mixes for lambs, goats, cattle, hogs, horses. We have all kinds of stuff. So make sure you check that out on foundationfeed.com and see what we've got going on there for you. Again, if you have any questions, let us know. With that being said, let's get back to the video. Okay, so now we get down to the brass tacks of, okay, well, what should I raise? Should I raise sheep or should I raise goats? And we've been getting a lot of questions about this recently. And there's been a considerable amount of grumbling going on in the industry. We've heard a lot of producers that are shifting to goats, and the reason that they're shifting away from sheep and shifting to goats is they're finding that their customer base prefers goats. And I can agree with this. Most of the ethnic buyers that come, and when I say ethnic buyers, I'm talking about lots more than you probably think. So I'm talking about in our area alone, I have a significant number of Greek customers, Islamic customers, European customers, islanders. So I get people that are from Jamaica, places like that, Hindus, all people from the Middle East. I am getting people from all over. It would appear that pretty much everyone, other than individuals from Canada and the United States, prefer goat and lamb over anything else. And while my customers will purchase lamb reluctantly, if I don't have a goat available, they would much rather purchase goat. And a lot of producers are seeing this. And then, of course, going back to what we talked about earlier, when you just look at the prices at the sale barn, it would appear that you're getting a lot more bang for your buck when it comes to raising goats as opposed to raising lambs. So here's the caveat with this that I would like you to think about. Are we getting out of sheep and getting all into goats? No, we're not. Do I have more goats now than I did? Yes, I do. But on a number basis, I probably have twice as many breeding ewes as I have breeding does. I'm aware of where the price is going. However, with seeing such a huge magnitude in shift of individuals going from raising sheep to raising goats, it kind of makes me hesitant to do it just because with the lack of supply in lamb, I suspect that the price may go up a little bit more, again, getting into that supply and demand thing. The other thing is, I've raised sheep and I've raised goats for a long time. I know what my feed conversion ratios are. I know how much weight I can put on a lamb versus how much weight I can put on a goat and how fast I can get that done. I can tell you by crunching the numbers, if I take a goat and a lamb born on the same day, of course now I'm talking about a goat that is bred for production, and I'm talking about a lamb that is bred for production. If I take my best production lamb, my best production goat kid, and they're both born on the same day, and I feed them the exact same amount, I am going to get 25 to 30% more weight on my lamb than I am on my goat. And I do feel that in a shorter amount of time, my lamb is going to look more muscular, more fleshy. They're going to sell for more. They're going to look a little bit more mature than the goat does. And customers come out and they look at that, and they many times feel like they're getting a better bargain for their money in purchasing the lamb than they do with purchasing the goat. So that has to be considered, that has to go into play when you're talking about taking these animals to the sale barn. If I can get my animals, my lambs to the sale barn quicker with less feed, less stress on everybody, less headaches than I can my goats, but I'm making a little bit less, it tends to all come out in the wash. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, you know, if the goat prices keep going in the way that they're going to where we're getting to, you know, goat prices being 50 to 100% more than that of lamb prices consistently across the board, I may be making a different video and telling you something different. A lot of people, again, just as a side note, get really hung up on the idea of shearing sheep. You have two options for this. You have hair sheep that you can go with, and then shearing sheep is a nominal fee. If you're hard up for a shearer, let us know. We have professional shearers that travel all over the United States, and they're going to be shearing for a very reasonable price. I personally pay $7 a head to have my sheep shorn on my farm professionally, and that includes hoof trimming. So not really that much. So again, just a few things that I wanted to talk with you about, and I want to implore you, I want you to get involved with looking up information about what the prices are going for. You may have noticed in our Facebook community, I tend to kind of preempt going into our videos. I start asking poll questions. And so recently I asked some questions like, you know, where do you get your prices from? You know, find out what your local sale barn is selling for. Set yourself up for success. You know, do not put yourself in a position where you're undercharging for your animals. There's absolutely no reason for you to do that. So, you know, reach out to the USDA websites, do a search for USDA goat prices or USDA lamb prices and see what they are all across the United States and in your area. See what your local sale barn is doing, see what people are paying. Don't just go into it blindly. And read the articles, you know, follow up with some of the universities and see what they're saying about it as well. So with that being said, I think that's enough for you to digest. Again, as always, you know, I like to throw a lot of information at you. You know, raising sheep and goats can be extremely difficult, but it doesn't need to be. With the right information and the right knowledge base that you are more than capable of developing on your own, you can be a pro at doing this and feel comfortable doing this and really have a lot of fun and I think make a good profit. So with that being said, I am Tim from Linessa Farms, Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.